Okay, guys.
Right.
Okay, ladies, we're on. Good morning, evening. Let's see. Like people are all, I think, all over, right? We have
afternoon.
Exactly. So I am super excited. Actually, I am here with my co-moderator, Amanda. So let's just do a quick round introduction for people here. So we could start with Amanda.
Hi, yep, I'm Amanda. I'm one of the moderators at Nurturing Neurodiversity. So I'm so excited to be able to be here today and be able to help, talk with you guys and share some of this information.
Yes. So Amanda, you have a related background too. I know you're a mom like me, and we lost picture. Amanda?
Let's see here. Give me 1 second. What is going on here?
That's okay. We can hear you. Maybe sometimes. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah. So I was asking you about your related background.
Well, I am getting my bachelor's degree in psychology. So in childhood development psychology. So, and then I do have a 3-year-old autistic son as well. So I kind of have some like personal experience and then a little bit of education experience as well, learning through things.
Yeah. So Rachel, you can go next.
Yeah, my name's Rachel. I have a diagnosis of autism. I received it this past February. And I'm also a speech language pathologist who I've been working for 4 years now post my graduate degree. And so I worked with a lot of autistic little ones, but some also like school age and adolescents. I'm currently working in a practice that focuses much more on like anatomy, physiology related to speech, but there's a surprising overlap between the kids that come to the practice and then kids that like I suspect are on the spectrum.
Right.
So
thank you so much for being here. So okay, so Silvana, you want to go next? Our next guest.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm Silvana. I'm in Northern California. My 21-month-old son was diagnosed autistic at 19 months. So we are just starting out on this journey and, starting to educate myself about how best to support him in thriving and ultimately his, well-being. I also have a PhD in psychology and developmental psychology.
There you go.
So I have some background in child development, which has helped me navigate the information we're receiving from various sources.
Absolutely.
So I'm just really excited I'm seeking out communities that seem to celebrate neurodiversity versus some of the gold standard approach that see my son as something broken.
Gold standard.
Gold standard. So I'm just trying to kind of immerse myself, find, connection and community with people who can support us in approaching this.
That's great. That's awesome. So I'm next. I'm Macy, and I am also one of the moderators for Nurturing Neurodiversity Facebook group. And my background is I've been working with individuals with autism across different age groups for 30 years. And I got started into this field through actually ABA. So I know a lot about ABA. I was trained and had the opportunity to work with Dr. Ivar Lovas. I am very old. Like older, but so that's how I got into this field, which I love because I'm still doing it 30 years later, and my little clients grew up. And so my story was that I did ABA for a long time, And then I couldn't figure out many things, but particularly how to help my clients become just more mindful and having more self-reliance and self-advocacy. That was really hard to teach. And here in the Bay Area, we have Michelle Garcia winner. We have all these other experts who were ahead of me at that time. It was still really hard to help my most successful clients to just be able to confidently navigate relationships and, you know, just wanting to just that resiliency and all that, making independent decisions. So I switched into a relationship-based program and got certified in it. So I did this program called RDI, Relationship Development Intervention, for 20 years. So there are a few relationship-based approaches. So RDI is one, and Rachel is trained in Hannon. So she can talk about that. And of course, floor time, the search model, it's just more developmentally based relationship.
I'm also trained in CERTs.
There you go. So you could talk about that. And then, you know, as I said before, my little clients grew up and some of them managed to finish, you know, college, and some even have multiple degrees, but it made me feel really sad that they're not able, the employability, you know, neurodiverse employability, it is a jungle out there. So I just feel like as a professional clinician, if I have done my best in partnering with the clients and their families all these years, if the world is not ready for our kids, it's really hard. It just broke my heart. And I am also a recent diagnosis. I received my diagnosis as Asperger's, level 1. I don't know what that means, level 1, but I'm level 1. I had a long history of autism in my grandmother, my brother, my little nephew, and my son. So it's, you know, so in my family, the neurotypical one is only one person. The rest is neurodiverse.
Is that your husband?
No, my daughter.
Oh.
So she proudly said, I am the neurotypical one. You know, we're just, anyways, we all know that neurodivergence it was here, it's here today, and it's not going to go away. So I think this kind of conversations where we can help parents to just have a different mindset, it's really important. So anyways, so I think that's me. Okay, so how do we want to start this? So Silvana and Amanda, do you want to lead the questions? Amanda, you probably have.
I see here. I actually have our live like up on my computer as well.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to go up to like the questions and where everything is at.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about the autism myths. I think that's a good conversation because this is for parents of newly diagnosed child.
Right.
And I think there's so many wrong information based on old research that we all can share. One of the myths that I commonly hear from actually parents from all over the world, during the meetings when they receive the diagnosis, a lot of times they're being told that there's a window where your child can make optimal progress. So I think we all can say that that's a myth, and I'm a mom of a 12-year-old. So, and I work, and also Rachel here, so we can start with that myth. So what do you guys, it's definitely a myth. It's not correct.
Right. I know personally, I live in Ohio. Right. And when I started suspecting my son was autistic and went for the diagnosis, I know as soon as he was diagnosed, the developmental pediatrician there, the neuropsych, all of the professionals did say that. They told me
Right.
there is one time, you know, as
Mhm.
soon as you can get him into therapy, the better. I was also told by many professionals, the more hours of therapy, the better. At 2 years old, they recommended him 40 hours of ABA alongside of
gosh.
occupational and speech on top of that.
Right.
And I do believe, at least where I live personally,
Mhm.
they almost use autism almost as a scare tactic. And they make parents believe if you don't put your child in 40 hours of therapy, you're doing a disservice. You're not
Right.
helping your child. So a lot of
Right.
parents, not having the prior background and education, are truly doing what they believe is best for their child. And a lot of times you find yourself in a position where I was at, where I didn't have anywhere to go. And
Right.
everybody that I was going to was saying, you
Right.
know, put him in therapy and do this and do that. And I'm not
Right.
against therapy in any way, but
Mhm.
parents need to understand there's not just one option. There's not
Right.
just one prescription for autism, and this is what
Right.
you need.
Right.
Every child is different.
Mhm.
And it takes some research and some learning before I really felt comfortable making the decision on what type of services I wanted for my son.
Yeah, exactly. So the scientific information I can touch here is that about neuroplasticity, how our brain is an experience dependent organ. So our brain continues to change throughout our lifespan. So that's something I think it's important for parents to keep in mind, even when your pediatrician or a teacher, and everybody's telling you, you gotta get this, all these programs, all these checklists happening now, you know, otherwise you're gonna miss out, or your child's gonna miss out on just being able to function in the society. Right. That is a big myth. And I always say that our kids have one childhood. And I think autistic kids, or any kids, young kids with a diagnosis, once they are labeled, I think their childhood is taken away, you know, and they work very, very hard. And they don't understand why necessarily I have to do this therapy and that therapy. And so I think that's a keep in mind for parents, that there is such a thing. Oh, so here's the second myth that we can talk about: is more better. More therapies better. So maybe this is a good question for you, Rachel. What do you think? Because parents come to you because you're a speech therapist, and usually they don't just seek your guidance in speech therapy. They also have other things going on. Like it's like whole. If you imagine a kid's schedule, it's very, very busy. So what do you think about that?
So I'll start off by saying that I used to live in New York, and ABA, although present, like a structured ABA 40 to 20 hour program, although present, was kind of uncommon. So I, at that point, although I had thoughts about it, I hadn't had to deal with navigating parents whose kids were receiving large numbers of therapy. Right. But however, I moved recently. I moved in the beginning of July to Massachusetts. Right. And I'm finding that it is very, very different here. And these 40-hour programs are very common. Very, I mean, I think it more aligns with what you guys were talking about. And so I'm kind of just starting to have to figure out my exact game plan when a parent talks to me for speech, but then also about like what's going on in ABA, and like my kid is demonstrating a certain behavior and this and that, and you know, I know ABA is giving me their advice, like what do you think? But I guess to go back to your question of like, is more therapy better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one, of course, you don't want to take a child's childhood away from them by just having them have essentially a job all day, every day. Oh, someone
that's okay.
is.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay. Just keep going.
And that's what you're doing if you're signing up your 2 to 5 year old or beyond in 40 hours of ABA a week. It's a job.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question in relation to the first myth that you touched on, the window of optimal progress? Because thinking about this from a developmental psychology perspective, there is this kind of everything in development is building blocks. Like everything, foundational skills related to social interactions build into the ability to have more complex and meaningful relationships later.
Sure.
And so the thing that I'm trying, and I'm totally new to this, and we've, therapy, the only therapy that's been offered to us through insurance is ABA. They've recommended 15 hours a week for our son after we made it very clear that it would be unlikely we'd accept that much or any more. So I don't, but what the thing that I think about a lot is if I don't want my son to be someone else, but I want him to have the building blocks that will allow him to form relationships with friends in school. Like I need him to know that if he doesn't look at someone when he starts talking to them, a little kid won't know that they're talking, those are like, those fun. So I understand that neuroplasticity continues through life, but I do know that it is at its highest as young children. So can someone speak just a little to that?
Sure.
I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I'll let Maisie, you can go ahead.
Okay. So when it comes to living with autism, it means that we have a different neurotype. It means that our wiring is different. And the big difference is the way we perceive sensory. We have sensory differences, and those sensory differences also affect our lifestyle, what we prefer in terms of food, clothing, our movement, and our choice in leisure activities. It also affects the way we perceive and use communication, meaning that human beings not use multi-channel communication. In the verbal channel, it's actually just 20% of it or less. So when you want to connect with another person, you have to have the motivation to connect and the intention to connect. And babies learn to do this very, very early on, right? And the way, I guess, neurotypicals use these channels of communication, we use a lot of our nonverbal communication channels, so facial expressions, eye gaze, voice inflections, body orientations, and so on. Where autistic people, they do have the intention, and new research has shown there's nothing wrong with the way autistic people communicate, meaning that the intention is there. The desire is there to have relationships and to connect with other people. But the way they do it, the way we use our channels of communication is different. So what's happening very early on is that I think parents are having a hard time trying to figure out that wavelength with the baby, with the toddler, right? It's you're feeling you're out of sync. It's asynchronous, when you are with the young child. And then that's where you start feeling anxious, and then, you seek diagnosis and so on. And I think the focus is then changing the autistic traits to become like the neurotypical way, which the wiring will always be different in a life, like my whole life, it's gonna be different, you know? So I think when we talk about the building blocks, it's different. I used to do behavioral based intervention. That's what I was thinking. Well, I can teach somebody to look at me. I can teach somebody. Or I was thinking, well, this child needs to sit down first in order to learn, right? Which is actually not right, because learning is learning. You're sharing in the moment. Yeah, so that's where I think after 30 years, when I hang out with my autistic adult clients, they're still not looking at me. And I've had clients who shared the journey with me through ABA, and then we switched to the relationship-based program. And like I've been with them, I watched them grow up. But I felt like I felt short in that we spent so many years trying to teach this person to become someone else that he or she would never become, you know, because the wiring will always be different, you know. So that's a huge discovery, like for myself, you know. So when it comes to relationship blocks, I think we have to change parents' mindset in terms of how we use eye gaze, how we use understand emotions, and so on, because it looks different for autistics. Yeah.
And that
Can I add?
I was just gonna say, I think where I could think about more is not the expectation that we have that he maintain eye contact or anything like that, but I think about him entering preschool and trying to engage with his neurotypical peers and wanting him to have tools to be able to at least initiate those relationships. And that's where the anxiety comes from for me.
Right. Rachel,
so
go ahead.
Can I speak to, I guess, Maisie? I'm in complete 100% agreement with what Maisie was saying, like completely on the same page.
Yeah.
And I guess speaking to that exact situation of like, you know, your son is autistic. Sorry, my husband was like giving me a look. Your son is autistic, then going into a pre-K classroom, and of course, you know, he's still socially motivated and wanting to interact with neurotypical peers, and the neurotypical peers and likely the teacher are going to expect him to, when trying to like enter a play group, like face them or look towards them, or even if it's not exact eye contact, like, but because autistic people are more focused on the object of shared interest as opposed to the like the person, like that eye gaze is more on that object, even though there is still that relationship there. So in those situations, I think it's really, and my mind is like thinking to like in the ideal world of like where I really want things to start progressing. But I think it's very important that autistic children know that they're autistic, and autistic children know about neurodiversity. It's not just autism. There's ADHD, there's dyslexia, there's Tourette's, there's all sorts of things. And we teach things like, you know, race and religion and LGBT issues is now something that's being brought up at a younger age, and we approach these things in a child-friendly way. And I think that if neurodiversity was also brought up from a very young age, and taught to children, all children, not just autistic children, all children, neurotypical children, children that have ADHD, or children that are demonstrating, younger signs, I don't know, precursors to dyslexia or something, talk about it. And there's also the aspect of self-advocacy. So, I mean, I think what you were saying about like telling your son, well, like the other child isn't going to know that you're trying to play with him unless you're facing him. That's good. You're showing that there's a difference in communication styles. So at that point, I mean, I'm assuming your child in this scenario would like say something, like try to verbally say something. Yeah. And then the other peer might be somewhat confused because they're not being oriented to with facial expression or body language, but maybe helping the child just be like, hey, let's play together. I mean, that just is a very straightforward way of showing, like, I want to connect. And then since the other child ideally would have an overall understanding of like people connect in different ways and neurotypicality and neurodiversity, like it wouldn't be like a starting point of ostracization.
I would never be able to say that.
So yeah, I mean, I couldn't say it. So I think I still ended with saying it wrong. Yeah. But as a speech therapist. So that's kind of how I see.
I think I totally hear you. I think the first relationship is at home with the primary caregivers, and there's no how-tos that teaches parents what that looks like. It's not so much what it looks like, it's the feel, So I think the danger of letting your child be with therapists who are not parents, I think it's kind of dangerous, because your child has a lot of missing developmental foundation when it comes to that attunement with mom and dad. And it takes time to be rebuilt, and it is possible. And that is really the first piece. So an example would be like having a secure, the feeling of acceptance at home. So home needs to be unconditionally safe and loving for our kids of all ages, but especially when they're this young, this at the toddler, age, and for us as parents to really learn how to validate their way of relating to others. I think that's the first piece, and this is where I think the relationship-based approach and coaching, yes, I know, I remember that, Amanda. I was gonna circle back to you about this, that the social skills cannot be taught. I took pride in trying to do this for years and years, and they may be able to do it with facilitations, but as soon as they come home from school, they go straight to the bedroom and not come out until dinner time. And I could not figure out why, because the desire to connect with other people it's so complex, and it's really up to each person. It's very subjective, the way we want relationship and who we want to share our relationship with. We as parents, like, cannot make that happen for our kids. You know what I mean? But I think even little kids, little toddlers, when they flap their hands, and as parents to just join them and share that, I hear you, it's so exciting, you know, and really understanding, for example, stimming behavior, how important of a function that is for all of us, you know. Yes, alternative to ABA. Okay, so let's circle back to Amanda, because she has a story about her behavioral team trying to teach social behaviors.
Yeah, and then before that, I just wanted to mention too, with Silvana, with what you were saying about kind of like your worries about your child trying to develop these social interactions when the way he socially interacts is very untypical, and that other children might be able to notice that right away. As that my son just turned 3 in June, and we actually had a friend of ours from out of town come visit with their 3-year-old as well, 3-year-old little girl, and they're about 2 months apart. We had a jumping house in the back of the yard so the kids could jump and have fun. Well, the 3-year-old little girl ran up to my son and said, "Hi, you know, I'm Lorelai," and started to talk to him. Well, she realized very quickly my son was not paying attention to her. My son was not looking at her. He was not talking back. And it was actually kind of like a big point, because she looked up to me and actually said out loud, "What's wrong with him?" And that was the first time I've been asked that question, especially by a child. And it did hurt my feelings. I was unexpected. So it really caught me off guard. And so, but I looked at her and I said, "Oh, well, he's just a little bit different, but he does like to play. If you go run and jump, I bet he might jump with you." Because even though my son was not looking at her, my son does love to jump. So the 3-year-old little girl said, "Oh, okay," ran off and started jumping. Within a half an hour, my son was in there jumping with her, taking turns on the slide. They were laughing together. They were cracking up. They weren't conversating, and they might not have had a very typical play reaction, but my child was having fun with another child, and that other child was having fun as well. So I have the same fears, and I worry about my son going to kindergarten, but I also feel like the children that young, you might have to, you know, explain, and might have to say, "Oh, well, he doesn't talk like everybody else," or "He doesn't," you know, whatever. But children that age, they love to run, they love to jump, they love to do a lot of those same things. They will find connections in that way. So I definitely, that is a story that a lot of times, you know, I tell myself actually over again to reassure myself when he gets older, you know what, there are people out there who will like your child, who will accept your child. And sometimes it's just about finding those people. But to go back to what you were saying though, with like the ABA, my son, I did put my son in ABA therapy. He is no longer in ABA therapy. But in the beginning of my journey, again, that's what I was told was the best thing, and I wanted to do what was best for him. And I had him in there for about a month before we decided to go a different route with therapy. But the one thing that they taught him in the beginning, I'll say, is to wave hello when somebody enters a door, when somebody walks in, just to say hello and to wave hello. So right away, within a few weeks, I did notice him waving hello when somebody would walk in the door. And I automatically thought, oh, this means it's working. He's learning. He's going to, you know, have these social skills. And I shared with the group, you know, before, a very pivotal moment, I think, with me was the one day when my husband shut the door to leave for work, and the wind caught the door. And my door went open a little bit, and my son waved hello, and then looked at me in expectation for the reward he would get for saying hello. There was nobody at my door. There was nobody there. So my son, although he was displaying these traits of waving hello and doing certain things, he did not know why he was doing it. He knew he was doing it for a reward, so that mommy would give him a treat or a therapist would give him something. He did not understand, I am, you know, making this relationship, or I'm communicating in some way. And I feel like, as you know, as parents, that's one of our biggest concerns, is like the communication, the relationships.
Right.
So if our children are doing these traits, but they don't understand behind it, it's not going to be helpful. It's not doing what we want to do.
Right. Right.
That's
I know personally for me, since I've been doing more of like the relationship based, when I've been taking our playtime and using our playtime to my advantage, to try to show him, not teach him, but just show him this is back and forth communication. I've gotten so much farther doing it that way than when he was in therapy. And again, showing those traits, but I could tell there was no context behind it. And it's not going to be as useful when he gets older as it is just now.
So,
Amanda, did you, because I'm, living in the States, you probably have a similar situation that there's only one insurance covered option. I mean, we can do speech therapy once a week, but in terms of the therapeutic intervention, it's ABA or NADA. Did you then educate yourself on the relationship-based therapies and you implement them yourself, or how do we go about finding alternatives?
No, and I completely understand. And so currently my son does speech therapy once a week. So that is kind of like his main therapy that he gets. It's once a week for 45 minutes. And I did the thing that I did was I researched as much as possible. I read as much as possible. Especially from the autistic adult community. And I took their opinion, very seriously, because my son will one day be a part of that community. So I did a lot of research. There are consultants. I'm sure Maisie has a lot of information about that as well, for relationship-based therapy. The ones that I saw, to be honest with you, weren't affordable for myself. So that is kind of where I'm at, is I do things at home. Usually like 2 to 3 days, I try to take 15, 20 minutes of time and sit down and really do like back and forth play where he sees it's my turn, it's your turn. Because I feel like in preschool that's important. Nobody wants to play with somebody who doesn't share or who doesn't take turn. And communicate in a way for him that's easier and that he'd be able to expand his vocabulary, expand his communication. So right now I do the big therapy that he's getting is speech, and then I do things at home with him. But I do feel like therapy, a lot of times is attempting to teach or, expose a child to something. And there's so many ways to do that when they're this young, when they're 2, 3, 4 years old, that to them it's playing. When me and my son and my daughter, we play with the ball, he just thinks we're playing. He doesn't know, oh, well, actually, mom is getting on my level and speaking to me a certain way and doing things a certain way. He has no realization of that. But even, doing that and taking playtime and using it to your advantage, I feel like is just as good as, if not way better than the therapy that he was going to.
How does that differ than what, if you saw my question, and I feel like perhaps I'm being duped by the agency, but if you see the way they've described, we talked a lot about our philosophy, our values, and this is how they described what they wanted to do with my son. Fully play-based, naturalistic, short sessions. He can opt out whenever he wants. The focus that we said was important to us is self-advocacy and autonomy. So he is verbal, but he doesn't use language to say what he wants as much. So it was
I can answer that because
I have to go really now because my husband's pestering me. But I do want to say one thing relating back to what Amanda was talking about with her with the speech therapist, 45 minutes a week, what is that? And then then what if you're not doing ABA 40 hours a week, then what? So I'm a speech therapist, and I know a lot. I worked in early intervention for several years, but I know a lot of other speech therapists, and I've talked to a lot of other speech therapists that have worked with very little autistic children. And The reality is that a lot of speech therapists, either when they're going to the house or they are doing the teletherapy, it's just like them and the therapist. It's just the therapist and the child doing their sort of interaction, and then maybe the parent will like observe. Maybe the therapist will then summarize what was worked on at the very end. And to me, that is bad speech therapy for our autistic little ones. It is like evidence-based, particularly with this young population, for the therapist, for the speech therapist, to be assisting the development of the parent-child relationship. And then if that is done, that sort of thing, like I mean, essentially turn taking, like as you're saying, how to have these loops of communication. And I mean, I don't know what your speech therapist is doing, but it sounds like since you had to go above and beyond to like research the best way for you to interact with your son, I more speech therapists should be helping with that parent-child connection, like as Maisie said, like that is the point. So I'm just sorry to hear that there's speech therapists out there that are that are failing not failing, but like aren't helping the family unit as much as really should be.
Well, that's why we have a lot of work to do. So I thank you so much for being here. So this is a big topic, so we have to do it again maybe next month, and to just talk about speech therapy. So we'll do that next month. You know,
I gotta go now. Thank you for letting me
bye, Rachel.
Pop out, and you can contact me on I have a professional Facebook page. So
yes,
okay, bye.
Bye,
everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, bye. So I could answer Silvana because I used to do that. Obviously, develop a treatment plan for in-home programs. The difference is all in the intention. You know, in terms of teaching human connections, you cannot teach it. You can only develop it. And I think only moms and dads or grandparents, so what we need is a guide who will love this little human being like no one else. We need parents to fall in love with their kids' just personalities and everything that come with that kid, and I think autistic people, they're very sensitive. They feel your vibe. So it's not just teaching skills. And this is where I think programs, therapists, clinicians fail, because they forget that you cannot teach therapists, junior therapists, in just a week or two by sending them out to shadow people who are experienced. And it's all very much intervention based, fixed mindset base. That's the treatment plan, and that is where I think parents cannot be replaced. We are not replaceable as parents. We just then kind of outsource instead of insource, where what we need to do is actually slow things down and really figure out how to be in tune with our baby, and it's not easy. And I mean, I had the same concern, of course, with our son. I used to worry about that, oh my gosh, he just never wants to have any friends. Like every birthday party, you know, I had to be detective, like ask his teacher, who does he play with, and blah, 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 you know, because he never would name any friends, you know. But today he has a small group of friends, and they love to do the same thing. And it takes a lot out of him to be with other people who are not his family members, because his brain, his mind has to work harder. But that will change. The sensory profile does change over the years, and I do feel like it gets better. Once you are able to empower yourself, okay, the sound is bothering me, I'm going to switch it off. You know, these are foundations for like self-advocacy, developing self-awareness. Therapists cannot teach all that, you know. So the one situation where I say to parents, if your child has apraxia, dyspraxia, global motor delay, if there are other co-occurring conditions that's very, very apparent, then by all means get help as much as possible. You know, if you have a 2-year-old who's not walking, I work with like teenagers who are not toilet trained. Of course, we want to continue to work on that in any way that we can, even behavioral ways, you know, but also work with experts who can help you figure this out more in a more, there's something organic going on, you know. So definitely. But a lot of times when the kids are little, like up to 3 years old, you know, they're still developing, you know. That's actually the golden time for parents to really figure out that connection part. And once you learn how to change your mindset of like, really, we have to come into their world as much as we have to come into their world first in order for them to meet us halfway, you know, however that may look like. Because the wiring will always be different, and we need to validate them, like their ways okay too. And as parents, I have to be, and you guys too, be advocates to our kids, because when they're in school, you guys, they're always bullies, they're always people who don't understand them. We can't protect them. But I think what I'm grateful for is that with my kid, if something happens at school, he can come home and he can cry, and he can, you know, he knows that we are in his corner. That's really important. And I think the sensory processing is a big piece. So I think OT is really important, Silvana. If you can get a good OT, and you're in my area, so I know a lot of really good OT clinicians who have more of like really good parent training and relationship based, you know, and so on. I think as parents, we want to know how to make things better. We feel like our kids struggle so much. You know, I used to be in that space too, but I think over time, I respect, like, look, he can't maintain the social thing for a long time. And that's okay.
Right.
You know, there are different ways, you know, but I think the first part now, because you guys have little ones, is really, no one knows the answer. I still don't know all the answers, you know, and that's okay. And that's just part of the journey. So anyways, oh, I think we should do this again because it's already almost an hour and I have another interview going. But Silvana, you could just message me. I think the sensory part is important, right, Amanda? The sensory, I would say OT, sensory integration.
Yeah, I mean, Adrian doesn't have any problem behaviors, and we don't find him difficult to connect with.
Yeah,
it's different, but
yes. So there you go. Yeah,
and we love spending time with him. He's incredible.
There you go.
The best.
Yeah. So he's on the right track. Believe it or not, it sounds like
if you can find an OT and speech therapist, they will they'll give you like homework every week too, obviously, to kind of do things. So I do like that part about speech therapy, that it provides accountability for me. It kind of keeps me on my toes. And when things progress, I'm like, oh, where do I go from there? He's saying words. What do I do now? There's somebody there for you who can tell you, okay, this is the next step. Start working on this, you know? And I feel like that has been the most useful out of everything.
Yeah, and I think parent training is important, but I think I used to train parents to become, behavioral therapists, and that's not reasonable. Parents, our kids don't want us to be therapists, they would hate it. And then, so I think to just be mindful of that our role is to really figure out how to be the best person first, that then we talk about self-care and all that stuff, balance for us in order for us to be able to share the best part of ourselves, because human connections and relationship, it goes both ways. And it's just, but it's not our fault, because professionals really scare us, like we're being told all this information, and then too much information on the social media. You just really don't know, like, where to even
rabbit
begin.
hole very quickly.
Yeah, but Silvana, it sounds like your kid is like having like a secure attachment. So that's really awesome. So yeah, I guess we have to kind of wrap it up now. but I think we touched some very good points. We didn't even go over our list yet. I had other myths, so we have to do this.
We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you both.
So yeah, I hope that was a little helpful. So
all right, we'll see you next time.
Okay, yeah, we'll schedule it again next time. So you're in our group now, right? Yeah, good. That's awesome. Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.